Sarah Martinez looked at the clock on the restaurant wall. It was almost 9 in the evening. Her feet hurt badly from walking around all day. She had been working at Romano's restaurant since 6 in the morning. This was her second job of the day. She also worked at a coffee shop every morning before coming here. Sarah was 23 years old. She had long black hair that she always tied back in a neat ponytail for work. Her uniform was a simple black dress with a white apron. She always kept it clean and pressed, even though she was very tired most days. The restaurant was fancy. Rich people came here to eat expensive food. The tables had white cloth covers and real flowers. The lights were dim and warm. Classical music played softly in the background. Sarah had to be very polite to all the customers. She had to smile even when they were rude to her. Sarah needed money badly. She wanted to go back to school. She wanted to study music therapy. This meant she would learn how to help sick people feel better using music. The school cost a lot of money. Sarah did not have rich parents who could pay for her. She had to save every dollar she could. Her apartment was very small. It had one room, a tiny kitchen, and a small bathroom. The rent was still too expensive for her, but it was the cheapest place she could find. She ate simple food like rice and beans most days. She could not afford to eat at restaurants like the one where she worked. Sarah had a secret dream. She loved to play piano. When she was a little girl, she always wanted to learn. But her family did not have money for piano lessons. Her mother cleaned houses for work. Her father worked in a factory. They worked very hard, but there was never extra money for things like music lessons. When Sarah was 16, she found an old keyboard at a thrift store. It cost $20. She saved money from her part-time job for 2 months to buy it. The keyboard was old and some keys did not work well, but Sarah did not care. She was so happy to finally have something to practice on. Sarah taught herself to play piano. She watched free videos on the internet. She borrowed music books from the library. She practiced every night after work and school. Her neighbors sometimes complained about the noise, but Sarah kept practicing. Music made her feel alive. When she played piano, she forgot about being tired and worried about money. At Romano's restaurant, there was a beautiful grand piano in the corner. It was black and shiny. The restaurant owner bought it to make the place look fancy. Sometimes they hired a piano player for special events. But most nights, the piano just sat there empty. Sarah often looked at that piano while she worked. She wondered what it would feel like to play such a beautiful instrument. Her old keyboard at home had only 66 keys. A real piano had 88 keys. She imagined how amazing the sound would be. The restaurant was busy that night. Sarah carried heavy trays of food back and forth. She took orders and brought drinks. She cleaned tables and smiled at customers. Her feet hurt more and more, but she kept working. She needed this job. At table 12, there was a man eating alone. He looked to be about 40 years old. He wore an expensive suit that probably cost more than Sarah made in a month. His watch was gold and looked very costly. He had short black hair and was reading something on his phone while he ate. Sarah did not know who this man was. His name was Robert Chun. He was very rich. He owned a big technology company. He had more than $200 million. Robert often ate at expensive restaurants when he traveled for business. He was in town for important meetings. Robert seemed different from most rich customers. He was polite when Sarah brought his food. He said please and thank you. He did not act like he was better than her. Some wealthy customers treated Sarah like she was invisible. They snapped their fingers at her or called her girl instead of using her name. Sarah brought Robert his main course. It was expensive fish with special sauce. The meal cost more than Sarah made in a whole day of work. Robert looked up from his phone and smiled at her. Thank you, he said. Everything looks delicious. Sarah smiled back. You're welcome, sir. Can I get you anything else? Not right now, thank you, Robert said. Sarah walked away to help other customers. But she noticed that Robert kept looking around the restaurant. His eyes often went to the piano in the corner. Sarah wondered if he could play music too. The night went on. Sarah's legs felt very heavy. She had been working for 15 hours that day, but she could not slow down. The restaurant was full of customers who wanted fast service. Sarah brought Robert his dessert. It was a fancy chocolate cake with gold decorations on top. Robert was still looking at his phone, but he seemed more relaxed now. "That piano is beautiful," Robert said. Suddenly, Sarah was surprised he was talking to her. Most customers did not make conversation with servers. "Yes, it is," Sarah agreed. "It's been here for about 2 years. Does anyone ever play it?" Robert asked. "Sometimes we have a piano player for special parties," Sarah said. "But not very often," Robert nodded. He took a bite of his cake. "Do you play piano?" he asked. Sarah felt her face get warm. She was embarrassed. She did not want to tell this rich man about her old keyboard and her dream of being a real musician. "A little bit," she said quietly. "I'm not very good." "I'm sure you're better than you think," Robert said kindly. Sarah did not know what to say. She looked at the piano again. For just a moment, she imagined herself sitting there, playing beautiful music for everyone to hear. "I should let you finish your dessert," Sarah said. She started to walk away. "Wait," Robert said. Sarah turned back to him. There was something different in his eyes now. He looked interested and excited about something. "What kind of music do you like to play?" he asked. Sarah hesitated. She was not used to customers asking her personal questions. But Robert seemed genuinely curious. "Classical music mostly," she said. "Chopin is my favorite composer." Robert's eyes lit up. "Chopin is wonderful, very emotional music." Sarah nodded. She loved how Chopin's music could make her feel so many different things. Happy, sad, hopeful, dreamy. When she played Chopin, she felt like she was speaking a language that everyone could understand, even without words. "Well, I should get back to work," Sarah said. The restaurant was still busy, and her manager did not like servers to chat too long with customers. "Of course," Robert said. "Thank you for the conversation." Sarah walked away, but she felt strange. Something about talking to Robert made her feel different. He had asked about her music in a way that made her feel like her dreams were important. Most people did not care about what a server wanted to do with her life. As Sarah worked, she kept thinking about their conversation. She wondered why a rich businessman would care about her piano playing. She wondered if he played music too. She wondered what it would be like to have enough money to buy a real piano and take proper lessons. Sarah did not know that this conversation would change her life forever. She did not know that Robert Chun was about to make her an offer that would shock everyone in the restaurant. She just knew that for the first time in a long time, someone had asked her about her dreams and seemed to really care about her answer. The night was about to become very different from any other night Sarah had ever experienced. Sarah finished serving dessert to table 6. A couple there was celebrating their anniversary. They were happy and laughing together. Sarah smiled as she watched them, but inside she felt a little sad. She wondered if she would ever have enough free time to go on dates or celebrate special occasions. She looked back at Robert Chun at table 12. He was still eating his chocolate cake slowly. Most customers ate quickly and left. But Robert seemed to be taking his time. Sarah wondered if he was waiting for something. The restaurant was starting to get less busy. Some tables were empty now. Sarah's manager, Mr. Romano, was counting money at the front desk. He was a short man with gray hair who always looked stressed. He worked very hard to keep the restaurant successful. Sarah began cleaning the empty tables. She wiped them down and put new white tablecloths on them. She arranged the flowers and made sure everything looked perfect for tomorrow. This was her favorite part of the job because it was quieter and less stressful. As she worked, Sarah found herself looking at the piano again. It really was beautiful. The wood was polished so well that she could see her reflection in it. The keys were clean and white. Sarah imagined what it would sound like in this room with its high ceilings and good acoustics. Robert finished his cake and pushed the plate away. He was still looking at his phone, but Sarah noticed he kept glancing at her while she worked. She wondered what he was thinking about. Sarah went to his table to clear his dishes. "How was everything tonight, sir?" she asked politely. "Excellent," Robert said. The food was wonderful and the service was perfect. Sarah felt proud. She always tried to do her best work even when she was tired. Thank you, sir. Can I bring you anything else? Coffee? Tea? Robert looked at her carefully. Actually, I wanted to ask you something. Sarah waited. She hoped he was not going to. Complain about something. You said you play piano. Classical music, Chopin? Robert's voice was serious but kind. Yes, sir, Sarah said quietly. How long have you been playing? He asked. Sarah felt nervous. She did not want to admit that she was completely self-taught. About 7 years, she said. 7 years, Robert repeated. That's a long time. You must be quite good by now. Sarah shook her head. I'm really not. I just play for fun. I never had real lessons or anything. Robert leaned forward in his chair. He looked very interested now. Would you mind if I asked you something unusual? Sarah felt her heart beat faster. What do you mean? Robert pointed to the piano in the corner. That piano has been sitting there all evening, completely silent. It seems like such a waste. Sarah nodded. She had thought the same thing many times. I was wondering, Robert continued, if you would consider playing something for me. Sarah felt shocked. Oh no, I couldn't do that. I'm working. And I'm not good enough to play in front of people. What if I made it worth your while? Robert asked. Sarah did not understand. What do you mean? Robert smiled. It was a kind smile, but there was something exciting in his eyes. What if I told you I would pay you to play piano for me? Sarah felt confused. Pay me? But I'm just a server. I'm not a real musician. Everyone is a real musician if they have music in their heart, Robert said. And I can tell you have music in your heart. Sarah looked around the restaurant. There was still about 10 customers eating dinner. Mr. Romano was still at the front desk. She could not just stop working to play piano. I don't think my boss would let me, Sarah said. What if I talk to your boss? Robert suggested. Sarah felt nervous. She did not want to get in trouble at work. She needed this job desperately. Robert seemed to understand her worry. Look, I don't want to cause any problems for you, but I have a feeling you're more talented than you realize. Sometimes people need a chance to show what they can do. Sarah looked at the piano again. She imagined sitting there, playing music for real people instead of just for herself in her tiny apartment. The idea was exciting and terrifying at the same time. What would I have to play? She asked softly. Whatever you want, Robert said. Something that means something to you. Sarah thought about all the pieces she knew. She had memorized many songs over the years. Her favorite was Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. It was beautiful and sad and hopeful all at the same time. She had played it hundreds of times on her old keyboard. I don't know, Sarah said. What if I make mistakes? What if people don't? Like it? Robert leaned back in his chair. Let me ask you something. What's the worst thing that could happen? Sarah thought about it. People might laugh at me. I might embarrass myself. And then what? Robert asked. Tish, and I guess I would. Go back to work and finish my shift? Exactly, Robert said. But what's the best thing that could happen? Sarah had never thought about that. I don't know. Maybe you would discover that you're braver than you thought. Maybe you would make people happy with your music. Maybe you would prove to yourself that your dreams are worth pursuing. Sarah felt something strange happening inside her chest. It was like a warm feeling spreading through her whole body. For years, she had played piano alone in her room. She had never thought about sharing her music with other people. Robert reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. I want to make you an offer, he said. Sarah waited, holding her breath. If you play piano for me tonight, I will give you $10,000. Sarah felt like the world stopped moving. $10,000, that was more money than she made in 6 months. That was enough to pay for a whole semester of school. That was enough to change her life? $10,000? She whispered. Double quotes $10,000, Robert confirmed. But there's one condition. Sarah's heart sank. She knew there had to be a catch. What condition? She asked. Robert smiled. You have to play something that moves me to tears. Sarah stared at him. Moves you to tears? That's right. If your music can make me cry, you get the money. Sarah felt overwhelmed. This was impossible. She was not good enough to make someone cry with her music. Especially not a rich, successful man like Robert Chun. I can't do that, she said. I'm not that good. How do you know? Robert asked. Have you ever tried? Sarah realized she had never played for anyone except herself. She had no idea what her music could do to other people. What if I can't make you cry? She asked. Then you don't get the money, Robert said simply. But you also don't lose anything. You just go back to work. Sarah looked around the restaurant again. Other customers were starting to notice their conversation. Some were looking at them curiously. People are watching, Sarah said nervously. Let them watch, Robert said. Maybe they'll enjoy the music too, Sarah felt torn. Part of her wanted to run away and hide. But another part of her was excited. This was a chance to do something she had always dreamed of. This was a chance to play real music for real people. I need to think about it, Sarah said. Of course, Robert said. Take your time, but don't think too long. Sometimes the best opportunities come when we least expect them. Sarah walked away from his table, but her mind was spinning. $10,000? That amount of money could change everything for her. She could quit her morning job at the coffee shop. She could focus on school. She could maybe even buy a real piano, but what if she failed? What if she sat down at that piano and nothing beautiful came out? What if she embarrassed herself in front of everyone? Sarah continued working, but she could not stop thinking about Robert's offer. Every time she looked at the piano, she felt excited and scared. Every time she looked at Robert, he was watching her with patient, encouraging eyes. The night was getting later. Soon Sarah's shift would be over and Robert would leave. If she was going to take this chance, she had to decide soon. Sarah had no idea that in the next few minutes, she would make a decision that would change not just her life, but the lives of everyone in that restaurant. She had no idea that her music was about to touch people's hearts in ways she never imagined possible. The moment of truth was coming closer. Sarah carried a tray of dirty dishes to the kitchen. Her hands were shaking slightly. She could not stop thinking about Robert's offer. $10,000 to play piano. It seemed too good to be true. In the kitchen, Carlos was washing dishes. He was a kind man who had worked at the restaurant for many years. He always smiled at Sarah and asked how she was doing. You look nervous tonight, Carlos said in his gentle voice. Everything okay? Sarah looked around to make sure no one else could hear. Carlos, what would you do if someone offered you a lot of money to do something you loved, but you were scared you might fail? Carlos dried his hands on his apron. That's a good question. I think I would ask myself, what if I don't try? Will I always wonder what could have happened? Sarah nodded. That was exactly what she was thinking. Fear is normal, Carlos continued. But sometimes the best things in life happen when we do things that scare us. Sarah thanked Carlos and went back to the dining room. She looked at Robert. Again, he was still sitting patiently at his table. He was not rushing her or pressuring her. He was just waiting. Sarah noticed that other customers were starting to leave. Table 6, the anniversary couple, paid their bill and left with big smiles. Table 15, a business dinner, was asking for their check. Soon, there would be fewer people in the restaurant. Maybe that was good. If she was going to embarrass herself, it would be better with fewer people watching. Sarah made her decision. She walked slowly to Robert's table. Her heart was beating so fast, she thought everyone could probably hear it. Sir, she said quietly. Robert looked up from his phone. Yes? I want to try, Sarah said. The words came out as a whisper. Robert's face lit up with a big smile. Really? Sarah nodded, but I need to ask my boss first. Of course, Robert said. Would you like me to talk to him with you? Sarah thought about it. Having Robert there might help. Mr. Romano was a businessman. He would probably listen to another businessman. Okay, Sarah said. They walked together to the front desk where Mr. Romano was still counting money. He looked up when he saw them coming. Mr. Romano, Sarah said nervously. This is Mr. Chun. He's a customer and he has a request. Mr. Romano straightened up. He always became very polite when talking to customers, especially ones who looked wealthy like Robert. "Good evening, sir," Mr. Romano said. "How can I help you?" Robert smiled warmly. "Good evening. I've had a wonderful dinner tonight. Your restaurant is excellent." "Thank you, sir," Mr. Romano said, looking pleased. "I noticed you have a beautiful piano," Robert continued. "I was wondering if it would be possible for Sarah here to play something for me." Mr. Romano looked surprised. "Sarah? But she's working." "I understand," Robert said. "I would be happy to compensate you for her time. And I think other customers might enjoy the music as well." Mr. Romano looked at Sarah with confusion. "You play piano?" Sarah felt embarrassed. "A little bit," she said. Robert pulled out his wallet. "I would be happy to pay for the privilege of hearing some live music in your beautiful restaurant." Mr. Romano's eyes got bigger when he saw Robert's expensive wallet. "Well, I suppose if you're a paying customer, and if it's just for a few minutes." "That's all I need," Robert said. Mr. Romano looked at Sarah. "Are you sure you can do this?" "I don't want to embarrass the restaurant." Sarah felt hurt by his words, but she understood his concern. "I'll do my best, sir." Fine, Mr. Romano said. "But make it quick. We still have customers to serve." Sarah and Robert walked toward the piano. Sarah's legs felt weak. She could not believe she was actually going to do this. The piano was even more beautiful up close. The bench was padded with soft velvet. The keys looked perfect, like no one had ever touched them. Sarah sat down slowly on the bench. She adjusted it to the right height. Her hands were still shaking. "Take your time," Robert said gently. He pulled a chair close to the piano so he could watch and listen. Sarah looked around the restaurant. There were still about 8 customers eating dinner. Most of them had not noticed what was happening yet, but a few were starting to look curious. Sarah placed her hands on the keys. They felt smooth and cool under her fingers. She pressed one key very softly. The sound was amazing. It was rich and clear and much better than her old keyboard at home. "What are you going to play?" Robert asked softly. "Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major," Sarah whispered. "Beautiful choice," Robert said. "One of my favorites." Sarah closed her eyes and tried to calm down. She thought about all the times she had played this piece alone in her apartment. She thought about how the music made her feel, sad but hopeful, lonely but beautiful. She began to play. The first notes came out soft and gentle. Sarah had been worried that she would hit wrong keys because she was nervous, but her fingers remembered what to do. They moved across the keys like they had done thousands of times before. The sound in the restaurant was incredible. The high ceilings made the music echo in a wonderful way. It was like the whole room was singing along with the piano. Sarah started to relax. The music was taking over her nervousness. She forgot about the people watching. She forgot about the $10,000. She just played. The melody was flowing like water. Chopin had written this piece to sound like someone singing a sad, beautiful song. Sarah had always felt like she understood what Chopin was trying to say with this music. As she played, Sarah began to notice that the restaurant was getting quieter. The customers who had been talking were starting to stop their conversations. The sound of silverware hitting plates was getting softer. Sarah opened her eyes and saw that people were turning in their chairs to look at her. But they did not look annoyed or bored. They looked interested. Some looked surprised. At table 3, an elderly man had stopped eating his soup. He was staring at Sarah with wide eyes. His wife was holding his hand and smiling. At table 8, a young couple had put down their wine glasses. They were listening carefully to every note. Even the kitchen staff was starting to peek out through the service window. Carlos was standing there with a dish towel in his hands, listening with a big smile on his face. Sarah felt something amazing happening. For the first time in her life, she was sharing her music with other people. And they were really listening. The nocturne continued. Sarah's fingers danced across the keys. The melody rose and fell like waves on the ocean. Sometimes it was soft and gentle. Sometimes it was stronger and more passionate. Sarah looked at Robert. He was leaning forward in his chair, completely focused on the music. His businesslike expression was gone. He looked peaceful and moved. The music was telling a story. It was a story about longing and hope, about dreams that seemed far away but still felt possible, about beauty that could exist even in difficult times. Sarah realized this was exactly how she felt about her own life. She was struggling and working hard and sometimes felt very tired, but she still had hope. She still believed that beautiful things could happen. As the piece continued, Sarah noticed something else. The restaurant had become completely quiet except for the piano. Every single person had stopped what they were doing to listen. Mr. Romano was standing by the front desk with his mouth open. He looked shocked that his server could play music like this. A waiter who was carrying a tray of food had stopped in the middle of the room. He was just standing there, listening. Even the customers who had been getting ready to leave had sat back down in their chairs. Sarah had never experienced anything like this. She had never had so many people paying attention to her music. It felt scary but also wonderful. The nocturne was getting close to the end. The melody was becoming softer and more gentle, like someone falling asleep after a long day. Sarah played the final notes very carefully. She wanted them to be perfect. As the last note faded away, the restaurant stayed completely silent. Sarah lifted her hands from the keys. She looked around the room. Everyone was staring at her. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody said anything. Then, slowly, something amazing began to happen. The silence in the restaurant felt like magic. Sarah sat at the piano bench, her hands still resting on the keys. She could hear her own heartbeat. She could hear the soft hum of the air conditioning. But no one was talking. Then she heard something that made her eyes fill with tears. Robert Chun was crying. Sarah turned to look at him. This successful, powerful businessman had tears running down his face. He was not trying to hide them. He was just sitting there, letting the tears fall. But Robert was not the only one. At table 3, the elderly woman was dabbing her eyes with her napkin. Her husband was holding her hand tightly, and his eyes were wet too. The young couple at table 8 were both crying quietly. The woman was holding a tissue to her face. The man had his arm around her shoulders. Sarah looked around the restaurant in amazement. Almost every person in the room had tears in their eyes. Some were crying openly. Others were trying to wipe their tears away before anyone noticed. Mr. Romano was standing by the front desk, with his hand over his heart. He looked completely shocked. He had never seen anything like this in his restaurant before. Carlos was still watching from the kitchen window. He was smiling and crying at the same time. He gave Sarah a thumbs-up sign. Sarah felt overwhelmed. She had never imagined that her music could affect people this way. She had always thought she was not good enough to be a real musician. But these people were crying because of something she had played. The silence continued for what felt like a very long time. Then slowly, one person started to clap. It was the elderly man at table 3. He began clapping slowly and deliberately. His wife joined him. Then the young couple started clapping too. Soon, everyone in the restaurant was clapping, but it was not regular clapping. It was respectful, emotional clapping. The kind of clapping that happens when people have experienced something truly beautiful. Then, something even more amazing happened. People started to stand up. The elderly couple stood first, then the young couple, then everyone else in the restaurant. Even the kitchen staff came out and stood in the doorway. Sarah was getting a standing ovation. She had never experienced anything like this in her whole life. Robert stood up too. He was still crying, but he was also smiling the biggest smile Sarah had ever seen. The clapping continued for a long time. Sarah felt like she was in a dream. She could not believe this was really happening to her. Finally, the clapping began to slow down. People sat back down in their chairs, but they were still looking at Sarah with wonder and respect. Robert walked closer to the piano. "Sarah," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "That was the most beautiful thing I have heard in years." Sarah felt tears in her own eyes now. "Really? Really?" Robert said. "I have been to many concerts by famous musicians. I have heard orchestras in the best concert halls in the world. but I have never heard anything that moved me as much as what you just played." Sarah could not speak. She felt too emotional. Robert pulled out his phone. "I promised you $10,000 if you could move me to tears." Sarah had almost forgotten about the money. The experience of playing for all these people had been so powerful that the money seemed less important now. "You definitely earned it," Robert said. He started typing on his phone. "What's your name? Your full name?" "Sarah Martinez," she said. Quietly, Robert typed some more. Then he showed her his phone screen. "I just transferred $10,000 to you. You'll need to give me your bank information so it can go through." Sarah stared at the screen. She could not believe it was real, but Robert was not finished talking. "Sarah, I need to tell you something," he said. "I am not just a regular customer. I own a technology company. I have a lot of money, and I know many important people in the music world." Sarah listened carefully. "What you just did was not just playing piano," Robert continued. "What you just did was pure artistry. You took a room full of strangers and made them all feel the same emotion at the same time. That is a gift that very few people have." Sarah felt confused. "But I never had real lessons. I taught myself everything." "That makes it even more impressive," Robert said. "You have natural talent that cannot be taught. You have something special." Other customers were starting to approach the piano. The elderly man from table 3 walked over with his wife. "Young lady," he said to Sarah, "my wife and I have been married for 50 years. We have been to many beautiful places and heard many beautiful things. But what you just played reminded us of our wedding day. It was the most romantic thing we have heard in years." His wife nodded, still wiping tears from her eyes. "You have a wonderful gift, dear." The young couple came over too. "We're getting married next month," the woman said. "Would you consider playing at our wedding? We would pay you, of course." Sarah felt overwhelmed by all the attention. She had gone from being an invisible server to being the center of everyone's attention. More people wanted to talk to her. Everyone wanted to tell her how much they had enjoyed her music. Some asked if she gave piano lessons. Others wanted to know where they could hear her play again. Mr. Romano came over to the piano. He looked embarrassed. "Sarah, I had no idea you could play like that. I am so sorry I never asked about your musical background." "It's okay, Mr. Romano," Sarah said. "I never told anyone." "Well, from now on, if you ever want to play piano for our customers, you are welcome to do it," he said. "In fact, I think we should make it a regular thing. Our customers would love it." Sarah felt amazed. An hour ago, she was just a tired server trying to make enough money to pay rent. Now she was being offered opportunities she had never dreamed of. But the most amazing thing was still coming. Robert had been talking quietly on his phone while Sarah spoke with the other customers. Now he came back to the piano. "Sarah, I just made some phone calls," he said. "I called some friends of mine who work in the music industry." Sarah felt nervous and excited at the same time. "There's a woman named Dr. Patricia Williams who runs the music therapy program at the State University," Robert said. "She's also a friend of mine." I told her about what happened tonight. Sarah's heart started beating faster. The music therapy program at the State University was exactly where she wanted to go to school. But it was very expensive and very competitive. "Dr. Williams would like to meet you," Robert continued. "She wants to hear you play. If she likes what she hears, she might be able to offer you a scholarship." Sarah felt like she might faint. Scholarship? A full scholarship," Robert said. "Everything paid for. Tuition, books, even living expenses?" Sarah started crying again. This time they were tears of joy and disbelief, but Robert was still not finished. "I also called my friend Marcus, who manages classical musicians," Robert said. "He books concerts and recitals for young artists. He's very interested in meeting you too." Sarah could not believe what she was hearing. A few hours ago, her biggest worry was making enough money to pay rent. Now she was being offered opportunities that could change her entire life. "Why are you doing all this for me?" Sarah asked through her tears. Robert smiled. "Because talent like yours should not be hidden. because beautiful music should be shared with the world, and because I believe everyone deserves a chance to follow their dreams." Sarah looked around the restaurant. Customers were still talking excitedly about her performance. Some were taking pictures of the piano. Others were asking Mr. Romano if Sarah would play again tomorrow night. Carlos came over from the kitchen. "Sarah, I am so proud of you," he said. "I always knew you were special, but I had no idea how special." Sarah hugged Carlos. He had always been kind to her, and it meant a lot that he was happy for her success. As the evening continued, more amazing things kept happening. Customers gave Sarah their business cards and asked her to play at their events. Mr. Romano offered to raise her salary and let her play piano during dinner service. People took videos of her playing and said they were going to share them with their friends, but the most important thing was the feeling Sarah had inside. For the first time in her life, she felt like her dreams were not just possible, but actually happening. She had taken a huge risk by sitting down at that piano. She could have embarrassed herself. She could have failed completely. Instead, she had discovered something amazing about herself. She had discovered that her music could touch people's hearts. She had discovered that she was braver than she thought. She had discovered that sometimes the biggest opportunities come when you least expect them. The night was not over yet. There were still more surprises coming. But Sarah already knew that her life had changed forever. She would never again be just a server who dreamed of being a musician. Now she was a musician who happened to work as a server. And soon she might not need to serve tables at all. The best part of the evening was still ahead. The restaurant was buzzing with excitement. Customers who had planned to leave were staying longer, talking about Sarah's performance. New customers walking in could feel that something special had happened. The atmosphere was electric with joy and amazement. Sarah was still sitting at the piano, trying to process everything that had occurred. Her hands were shaking, not from nervousness anymore, but from pure emotion. She kept touching the piano keys gently, almost unable to believe that this beautiful instrument had helped change her life. Robert was still making phone calls. Sarah could hear him talking to important people, telling them about her performance. Every few minutes he would come back to her with more good news. "Sarah," he said, approaching the piano again, "Dr. Williams wants to meet you tomorrow afternoon. Can you come to the university at 2:00? Sarah nodded eagerly. She would have to ask for time off work, but she knew Mr. Romano would understand now. "And Marcus, the talent manager, wants to meet you next week," Robert continued. "He's already talking about possible performance opportunities." Sarah felt like she was living in a fairy tale. Just this morning she had woken up in her tiny apartment, worried about paying bills and wondering if she would ever achieve her dreams. Now, in one single evening, everything had changed. The elderly couple from table 3 came back to the piano one more time before leaving. "Dear," the woman said to Sarah, "my husband and I wanted to give you something." She handed Sarah a small piece of paper with their phone number written on it. "We host a charity event every year to raise money for the Children's Hospital," she explained. "We would be honored if you would consider playing at our event next month. We can pay you $500. Sarah's eyes widened. $500 for one performance was more than she made in a week at the restaurant. "We'll call you in a few days to discuss the details," the man said. "Thank you for giving us such a beautiful gift tonight." As they left, other customers approached Sarah with similar offers. A woman wanted her to play at her daughter's wedding. A businessman wanted her to perform at his company's holiday party. A young mother asked if Sarah gave piano lessons to children. Within an hour, Sarah had received offers for 6 different paid performances and 3 people wanting piano lessons. She could hardly believe it. Mr. Romano came to the piano with a big smile on his face. "Sarah, I've been thinking, what if we made you our official restaurant pianist? You could play here 3 nights a week during dinner service. I could pay you $300 per night, plus your regular server wages." Sarah calculated quickly in her head. $300 times 3 nights was $900 per week, just for playing piano. That was more than she currently made, working 7 days a week at both jobs. "And," Mr. Romano continued, I think having live piano music will bring in more customers. This could be very good for business. Sarah agreed to try it for a month to see how it worked out. She was excited about the possibility of making money doing what she loved instead of just working to survive. Robert finished his phone calls and came back to Sarah. I have one more surprise for you, he said. Sarah wondered what else could possibly happen tonight. I own a music production company as one of my businesses, Robert explained. We help young musicians make recordings and get their music heard by more people. Sarah listened carefully. I would like to offer you a recording contract, Robert said. We'll help you make a professional album of classical piano music. If it sells well, you could make a lot of money from it. Sarah felt dizzy. A recording contract was something she had never even dreamed about. She had only hoped to maybe get into music school someday. You don't have to decide right now, Robert said kindly. Take some time to think about it. But I believe your music deserves to be heard by many more people than were in this restaurant tonight. As the evening wound down, Sarah helped clean up the restaurant as usual, but everything felt different now. The other servers were treating her like a celebrity. Carlos kept humming the melody she had played. Mr. Romano was already talking about advertising live piano music on the restaurant's website. When Sarah's shift finally ended at 11 o'clock, she felt exhausted but exhilarated. Robert was one of the last customers to leave. Before I go, he said, I want to give you some advice. Sarah listened respectfully. What happened tonight was amazing, but it was just the beginning, Robert said. You have real talent, but talent alone is not enough. You'll need to work hard, practice constantly, and never give up on your dreams. Sarah nodded. She understood that this was not the end of her journey, but the beginning of a new chapter. Also, Robert continued, remember that success can change people. Don't let money or fame change who you are. Stay humble, stay kind, and keep playing music because you love it, not just because you can make money from it. Sarah promised she would remember his advice. Robert handed her his business card. Call me if you ever need anything. And let me know how the meeting with Dr. Williams goes tomorrow. After Robert left, Sarah sat alone at the piano for a few minutes. The restaurant was empty except for the cleaning crew. She played a few soft notes, just to hear the beautiful sound one more time. She thought about her journey to this moment. Growing up poor, buying that old keyboard with money from her part-time job, teaching herself to play by watching videos and reading library books. All those nights practicing alone in her apartment while her neighbors complained about the noise. She had never given up, even when it seemed like her dreams were impossible. She had kept working, kept practicing, kept believing that someday things would get better. Now, in one magical evening, everything had changed. Sarah walked home to her small apartment, but she felt like she was floating on air. She called her mother from her cell phone to tell her what had happened. Mia, her mother said, crying with joy, I always knew you were special. I'm so proud of you. Sarah promised to visit her parents soon and play piano for them. They had sacrificed so much over the years, working hard jobs to support their family. Sarah wanted to share her success with them. The next few weeks passed like a blur. Sarah met with Dr. Williams at the university and was accepted into the music therapy program with a full scholarship. She met with Marcus, the talent manager, who booked her first professional concert at a small venue downtown. She started playing at Romano's restaurant 3 nights a week, and the restaurant became so popular that people made reservations weeks in advance just to hear her play. Food critics wrote articles about the hidden gem restaurant with the amazing pianist. Sarah quit her morning job at the coffee shop. For the first time in years, she was able to sleep 8 hours a night and eat regular meals. She moved to a larger apartment that had space for a real piano within 3 months. Sarah was making more money than she had ever imagined possible. But more importantly, she was doing what she loved every day. She recorded her first album, a collection of classical piano pieces, including the Chopin Nocturne that had started it all. The album sold surprisingly well, and music reviewers praised her emotional depth and natural artistry. Sarah began performing at concert halls and music festivals. She gave piano lessons to children whose parents had heard about her story. She played at charity events to raise money for good causes, but through all of her success, Sarah never forgot the lesson Robert had taught her that first night. She stayed humble and kind. She always remembered where she came from. And she continued to play music because she loved it, not just because it brought her fame and money. 1 year later, Sarah returned to Romano's restaurant to play a special anniversary concert. The restaurant was packed with people who had heard about her story. Robert Chun was there in the front row, smiling proudly. As Sarah sat down at the same piano where her dreams had come true, she felt grateful for every difficult day that had led her to this moment. She thought about all the young people who might be struggling right now, working hard jobs and dreaming of something better. She began to play, and once again the room fell silent. Once again, people were moved to tears by the beauty of her music, but this time Sarah was not surprised by their reaction. She had learned that music has the power to touch people's souls, and she was honored to be able to share that gift with the world. The little server who had taught herself to play piano on an old keyboard had become a successful musician. But more than that, she had learned that dreams really can come true if you work hard, never give up, and are brave enough to take a chance when opportunity knocks. Sarah's story became an inspiration to many people. It showed that talent can be found in unexpected places, that hard work pays off, and that sometimes all it takes is one person who believes in you to change your entire life. And it all started with a simple question: do you play piano? Sometimes the most important moments in our lives come when we least expect them. Sometimes all we need is the courage to say yes when opportunity calls. And sometimes the most beautiful music comes from the most unlikely places. Sarah Martinez had learned all of these lessons, and her life would never be the same again.